Good morning, everyone. So today we're going to be working on plantar fasciitis, or at least the precursors of plantar fasciitis. I have a history of plantar fasciitis. It was, over 12 years ago. I had a really bad case of plantar fasciitis. It lasted about 7 months. Severe pain, bottom of the base of the heel, hurt to walk. Took a while to really get to the bottom of it for me. It was my first time experiencing it. Since then, a lot more experience working with it. Yesterday, middle of the day, started getting some discomfort, bottom of my foot around the heel. So I did some movement last night, and we're going to be working on some of the stuff to alleviate discomfort of the foot and really kind of look at plantar fasciitis more from a holistic. The pain of plantar fasciitis tends to be at the bottom of the foot, but the causes of plantar fasciitis are global. It's the full body. So biggest areas that I want to look at are the foot related to the hips. So we're going to be doing some work directly on the foot using a lacrosse ball, tennis ball, racket ball, any kind of, for soft tissue mobilization. We're going to use a foam roller for the calf. And if you have one, a yoga wedge for doing some general foot mobility. If you do not have a yoga wedge yet, this is going to be very end of class. You can get a lot of work done without one, but I find this to be a very, very beneficial tool for getting good foot mobility, especially related to foot pain. So, with all that, let's get started. All right, so we're going to start in quadruped to do a little assessment on foot, arch of the foot getting into the calves. Big thing with plantar fasciitis, it's back line of the body. So arch of the foot leads into the calf, which leads into the glutes, through the hamstrings going up into the back of the body. So I kind of want to do a little assessment of that entire line from the foot up to the hip. We'll do some more assessment in getting into the hips when we get into our shin box. So we're going to start on hands and knees, spreading fingers nice and wide, grounding palms, extending elbows, and tucking the toes, especially the big toe. It'll be good to kind of have the heels slightly turned in so that we can really isolate the big toe to start with. We're going to inhale as we rock forward. We're going to exhale as we let our hips sink to the heels. And what I want to do as we're kind of assessing the foot, I am interested in where there are tension patterns within each foot. My right foot is this foot that has some discomfort, some sensitivity to it. That sensitivity is largely on the lateral arch of the foot. So it's coming out to the fourth or fifth toe, pinky toe side of the foot. Plantar fasciitis can be anywhere in that foot, but it tends to have some pretty pronounced tension, whether it's on the inside arch of the foot or the outside of the arch of the foot. I want to get a good assessment for where that tension pattern is. I also want to be paying attention to the opposite foot as well. Whatever those tension patterns are in one foot, there's probably going to be oppositional tension patterns that are a part of what is going on. So we want to pay attention to both feet. So with those toes tucked, getting a nice inhale as we rock forward. Exhale as we rock hips to heels. And I want to really start by noting, is there a difference in big toe mobility? Does one big toe feel tighter, more restricted? Is it painful? If it's painful, then that's going to be a part of what's going on in that plantar fasciitis. So I definitely want to pay attention to that, and I want to make sure we are not pushing into that pain. We are staying on the edge of pain, no more than a level 1 or 2 on a scale of 0 to 10 as far as discomfort goes. So as I'm getting into this, both big toes are, a little tight. My left big toe feels less mobile. It feels tighter. So the discomfort is on my right foot, but the left big toe is the tighter of the two. As we get that kind of little assessment going and hopefully getting a little bit of mobility, we're then going to let the heels turn out as far as they can, trying to get tucked underneath all the way out to the pinky toe. Doing the same thing. Inhale forward, exhale as we sink hips to heels. Again, feel the difference, left side compared to the right side. As I get into this, I'd say they largely feel similar. I'm starting to feel more tightness in that lateral arch of the foot related to the pinky toe side on the right side. Left side actually feels pretty mobile. And the more I do this, and I sink in a little deeper, I'm feeling that right side of the foot definitely much tighter and tenser in that lateral arch of the foot. Now, we're going to sink back into kind of light tension, and we're going to do windshield wipers with the heels so that we're rolling from pinky toe across to big toe and back to pinky toe. And again, I want to get a good sense of where is that tension within the foot. I can feel this much more pronounced on the right foot than I can on the left foot. And as I go back and forth, I'm feeling that right big toe has a little bit of tension related to how I pull that heel in. So as I get some rotation into that big toe, heel turning in, that's where I start to feel the right big toe is a little tighter than the left big toe. We'll come out of that. Now I want to get into the shoulders a little bit because we're going to work up into some bear crawl position. We're going to bring hands forward. Still have spread hands. Elbows are actively straight. We're inhaling at the top. Exhaling, we're dropping sternum down to the floor, feeling into those shoulders, keeping good pressure downward. Inhale, coming right back up, and going nice and slow. As I'm dropping chest to the floor, I'm keeping those hands engaged so I get a nice mobility stretch through the shoulders. And on this, I kind of want to pay attention to both shoulders. How does that right shoulder feel compared to the left shoulder? Is one side a little tighter, more restricted? Are you able to go as far? Does it feel as connected? Does your hand feel grounded to the floor, or does one hand feel a little unstable? As I'm doing this, left shoulder feels a little tighter and a little less stable than the right shoulder. That's actually fairly normal, but I feel a little bit more pronounced, which tells me that there is maybe a cross-body relationship between that left shoulder and my right foot where I have some discomfort. On the next one, as we're dropping down chest to the floor, we're going to kind of stay at the bottom, taking some nice inhale to exhale. I want to push through the hands, sliding my hips back. Hands are nice and sticky to the floor, so the hips slide back, feeling the shoulder blades rise up to the ears, and then we're going to pull through the hands so that we're sliding our spine forward. I want to feel the shoulder blades slide down the rib cage like they're packing down to our back hip pockets. Elbows stay straight as we're moving back and forth. This is a small range of motion. We can then come out of that position, roll the shoulders out a little bit, make sure that they're not overly stressed. We're going to come back into our quadruped, spread hands, extended elbows, toes are tucked. Now we're going to get into our bear position, lifting the knees off the floor. I want to find that same level of depth as close to it as we can in our shoulders that we were just in that child's pose position. So reaching the sternum down to the floor, knees are staying bent. From here, we're going to do some gas pedal. I'm moving one leg at a time, extending the knee back like I'm trying to touch the wall with the back of my knee. At the same time, rooting down through the heel like I'm trying to touch the floor. The heel does not need to touch the floor, but we're reaching towards it. We're alternating from one foot to the other foot. Inhale as you let the knee soften. Exhale as you reach that knee away, reaching the heel to the floor, going back and forth. Now I want to feel what are the tension differences between the right side and the left side. Feeling through the foot, the calf, back of the knee, and the hamstring up the thigh. As I'm going back and forth on this, I get pretty good range through the right leg. On my left leg, it feels tighter, especially up behind the knee and into the hamstring. So again, that's a tightness on that left side, even though the discomfort is on the right side. That's going to be something that's relevant to the foot pain. We'll go ahead and drop knees back down to the floor. And now we're going to get up and do a little bit of foot mobility or footwork on our ball. I'm actually going to grab a staff to have as just a little bit of extra balance and stability. So got the lacrosse ball out. Now, we're doing some soft tissue work. Technically, this is massage, but I don't want to do deep pressure. I really want to use the ball as an assessment tool to feel what is the sensitivity and the tightness and tension on the bottom of the foot. How does it feel related to pressure? And it's going to be light pressure and it's non-painful pressure. So I don't want to push down and initiate into painful massage. That would actually be a counterproductive to what I want to work on with my foot. Last thing I want to do is add more inflammation to an area that might already have some inflammation. So we're going to start I want to kind of split the foot up into 3 sections based on the long bone. So I'm looking at the big toe being in the ray of that big toe all the way to the heel. Second and third toes moving up the middle of the foot, and then fourth and fifth toes moving up the lateral aspect of the foot. Those are kind of the 3 sections that we're looking at, and I want to feel, is there particular tension differences in one of those 3 sections? Is it tighter to the big toe side? Is it tighter to the pinky toe side? Is it tighter right down through the middle of the arch? So we're going to start by placing the ball of the big toe on the lacrosse ball and then moving that lacrosse ball into just a little south of the big toe into that nice meaty section, that muscle that attaches to the big toe. And from here, we're just going to allow gravity to work. Just allow that foot to kind of soften onto the ball. I'm not pressing, I'm not stepping, just light, letting the weight of my foot do the work. Taking some nice deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. That's where I like to imagine the bottom of your foot is melting butter. That ball is a hot knife. And if you put a hot knife to butter, you don't need to put any force into it. The butter will melt itself. And so as we're taking some nice breaths, within about 30 to 60 seconds, you should start to feel some melting. And I want to pay attention to how sensitive is it? If it's painful, I want to make sure that we're not getting into that level 3 or above pain. And as long as it is below that level 3, in that slight discomfort, kind of where it feels good but doesn't really hurt, we can start to move down that ray of that big toe line towards the heel. And if you feel little sensitive areas, you can let it rest, let it melt, and then move to the next, move down even further. And as we're doing this, again, I want to have this as an assessment because I want to compare how it feels on my right foot to the left foot. And it's pretty tight and sensitive, not painful. It actually feels pretty good, but definitely a little tighter than it normally is for me. It's about 30 to 60 seconds, maybe up to 90 seconds for each spot. Next, we're going to move the ball to the second and third foot, ball of the second and third toes. So ball is really kind of middle of the foot across the ball of the foot. And again, letting it melt and then slowly moving more towards the heel as you feel it melting. And again, kind of getting that assessment. Is it sensitive here to the same degree as it was on that big toe line, or is it less, or is it more? I'd say for me, it's less until I get kind of to the right to the arch of the foot, where it's a little bit more substantial. So midfoot feels pretty tight in that arch of the foot. Get nice deep breaths, melting butter, not pressing down hard. Just the weight of your foot should be more than adequate for this. It does not take a lot. A lot of what we're doing right now, on top of just assessing how it feels and where it feels tight and tense, is we're putting some ischemic pressure. We're basically pushing into that tissue, squeezing out any blood flow temporarily so that when we take the ball away, we're getting a fresh rush of blood flow, which helps to bring in fresh nutrients, remove waste from an area that might not be moving very well on its own. After about 30 to 90 seconds, we're now going to move to the fourth and fifth toes in that line, moving towards the heel. So again, kind of starting nice and soft, and we'll just slowly move an inch a little bit at a time, and where you feel sensitivity, as long as it's not over a level 3, nice deep breaths, feel it melt. I don't want that sensitivity to go away 100%. I only want about a 30 to 40% reduction in any kind of significant sensitivity when we're doing any kind of soft tissue work. So as I'm getting into this area, definitely has more tension. It's not super sensitive today. When I worked on this last night, it was far more sensitive. So it's definitely improved from where it was yesterday evening. I had a pretty substantial movement session last night that seemed to help, even though I can still feel it a little bit this morning. And as I get more into that midfoot area, moving closer to the heel, that is where I feel it. I'm really at the base of the fourth or fifth toe line, getting into that midfoot area, which is where it feels most stiff and stuck in that foot. So once we get done with that foot, we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other foot. So ball of the big toe on the lacrosse ball, and then moving just south end of that ball, that joint, into that meaty section of the muscle. Might be a little sensitive right off the bat, so go into it easy. And when I get into this one, it definitely has some tightness. It's not as sensitive as my right foot was. And again, as it melts, we're going to move more towards the heel. Now, as I get into the midfoot on this foot, midfoot area, it's a little bit more sensitive at that ball, the base of the foot. Actually, it's more, not quite midfoot. I'm still in forefoot area. So there's definitely a spot on this big toe line that is tight and stiff now that it's kind of melting and getting into it. And my big toe on this foot was tighter, was more restricted in the big toe assessment when we started out. So that kind of makes sense that I would feel a little bit of stiffness in there. And again, as that starts to melt, we're continuing to move in a little bit further down, 30 to 90 seconds for each spot should be more than adequate. We can do a little bit longer time if necessary. I don't want to spend more than like a few minutes on any area of the foot, or really any area with massage. I kind of like to keep it short and simple and then come back to movement. And if we need to reapply, we can reapply. Now coming to that second and third toe lines at the joint, big toe, or at the joint of the ball of the foot, and then moving just south of that into the muscle of the arch. Again, this one feels a lot different. So left foot, little sensitivity in the midfoot area, but compared to the right foot, it's not quite as noisy and loud. Nice deep breaths, melting butter, hot knife. As that area kind of gets nice and melted, we're going to then move to that fourth and fifth toe line. Now, as I get into that area on the left foot actually has some significant tension on that lateral arch of the foot. I would say it's actually about even with what I'm feeling on the right foot, except the right foot is where I have discomfort in this area. And now that I'm getting into it, I actually think the left foot is more tight and tense than the right foot is. So left foot, fourth toe, fifth toe, lateral arch of the foot. The discomfort I have is in the same area on the right foot, but when I get in and work on this with the left foot, that left foot is definitely tighter and more restricted, which is telling me some things that are going on within my hips, which I'll try to get into a little bit more as we get to the hips level of the class. So now I'm going to set the staff and the ball off to the side. And very quickly, I want to kind of get into the foot just a little bit. So what I have right now is lateral foot arch of my foot. Right side is where I have the discomfort. But where I have greater tension is in that left foot. One thing I know about my body, I've had 5 knee surgeries on my right knee. I have more of a collapsed arch on my right foot, so my right foot tends to go more into pronation. My left foot tends to be more in supination, which creates this kind of shift in the hips. So my weight distribution tends to move more to the left side, largely because of an injury history of having some knee instability. My body moves away from that knee, and that creates tension differences down in the level of the foot. And that's what I'm feeling in both the foot mobility and the lacrosse ball. So now we're going to go ahead and get out the foam roller, and we're going to do a little bit of work on the calves. So with the calves, I want to separate the calves into 3 sections as well, based on those same 3 sections we had for the arch of the foot. So we'll have, if we place our foot on the foam roller and that foot is facing straight up to the ceiling where you're going to be on that intermediate calf, if I turn my foot in about 45 degrees, I'm going to be on the medial calf. And if I turn that foot out 45 degrees, I'm going to be on the lateral calf. Now each of these sections of the calf are going to be congruent with each of the sections of the foot. So I'm going to assume that where you feel tightness and tension patterns within the foot is going to relate to where you feel it in the calf as well. And that's important because that's kind of giving us a map of where those tension patterns are at and what might be pulling that's creating inflammation or irritation within the foot. So, starting by just placing the calf, really the bulkiest part of the calf, the thickest area of the calf on the foam roller, we can come into a nice, comfortable position, resting on shoulders. If you need to rest on a bolster or something, that is fine. The weight of our leg is enough to start with. I want to make sure this is not painful. If you have sensitivity in the calf, then start light. If you've been using a foam roller for a while and this is not painful, then we can add our other leg just to have a little bit more weight. But again, I am not pushing and I'm not being forceful with the massage. So nice inhale, exhale, melting butter, hot knife. We can kind of slowly work up into, as long as we're staying on the bulky part of the calf. So we can work up or down, kind of seeking out where is it most sensitive. I'm starting with the foot straight up right now. It's not too bad. As I get kind of to the bottom of the calf before it goes into that Achilles tendon, it's a little bit more sensitive. I like doing a little bit of light movement, either flexing and extending the toes or pointing and flexing the ankle, or even doing little spirals where rotating the foot side to side, like I'm twisting trying to face the sole of the foot one way and then facing it the other way. And just seeing how that feels massage-wise on the foam roller. Once we get through that intermediate calf, we can then turn that foot in so that we're getting more on that lateral calf. Again, I want to be in assessment mode. I'm seeking where is it sensitive, and I want to compare this to the other side. Definitely have a little bit of tightness and tension on the medial calf, and that's going to be related to that big toe line. And again, if you need that extra gravity of the other leg, just letting it sit, taking nice breaths, melting butter, hot knife. Notice I am not lifting up my body. I'm not rolling back and forth. The last thing I want to do is stimulate by rolling on that foam roller. That will more than likely amplify tension patterns in the body. It's not going to reduce them. So I don't want it to be overly stimulating with the foam roller or the lacrosse ball, which is the reason I want to focus on melting butter, and I don't want to be focusing so much on the rolling back and forth. As that area is kind of melting, we're then going to turn that foot out 45 degrees, so now we're getting on that lateral aspect of the calf. And this is much more sensitive than the other two sections were, especially high up on the calf. So that's where I'm going to get a little bit of that softening and melting. Again, I want to see if I can get about a 30 to 40% reduction in that tension or sensitivity. And this is more related to that lateral arch of the foot, fourth and fifth toes, that outside edge of the arch. I'm feeling it on the outside edge of the calf. So kind of seeing how where I feel it in my foot is related to a pattern that's moving up into my hips, which means the hips have a good amount of, have a little bit to do with what's going on in that foot. And again, I like to keep moving that foot slowly and lightly as long as it does not increase the discomfort or make it painful what I'm doing. And largely by moving, I find it helps with the melting. It softens, I'm able to feel a spot and then take a breath and feel that melting action. Oh, there's a good spot. And then we'll switch and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now again, I want to have that assessment level of what am I feeling that's different on this side compared to the previous side. So as I get into that intermediate calf, my foot's straight up, opposite legs coming right on top, and then just breathing and letting it melt. Not feeling a whole lot in that intermediate calf. Going to explore down and up the calf a little bit. I mean, there's a little bit of tension in there, but it's nothing, not a whole lot. Next, turning that foot in about 45 degrees so that we're getting on the medial calf. Continuing to have that opposite leg just to add some gravity. Again, mild tension, about what I would expect, maybe a little bit more closer to the Achilles tendon or calcaneal tendon, depending on how modern you are in your anatomy. Definitely a little tighter closer to the foot than it is up towards the knee. And then we're going to roll that foot out 45 degrees. So we're getting on the lateral arch or lateral calf and doing the same thing. Kind of just moving up and down that area, seeing if there's anything that feels tight, sensitive. Can we get some melting in it? Now, as I feel it melt on this area, there's a little bit more tension through that lateral calf compared to the rest of the calf, which kind of goes back to what I was feeling in the lateral arch of the foot. It's not as sensitive as it is on the right side. Right side's more sensitive, but I definitely feel tightness and tension. It's a little bit bulky. You just kind of get a sense of how soft that musculature tissue is, or how like charged up, tightened up, like it's contracted and holding tight to stabilize. But overall, left calf and right calves feel significantly different. All right, we're going to come back into our quadruped. So tucking toes, we're going to go back and explore foot mobility and then calf mobility. So nice inhale as we're rocking forward. Exhale as we're sinking hips to heels. And then hopefully coming back to this a second time after using the ball, you're going to find that you have a little bit more mobility in both feet. Balls of both big toes feel a lot more mobile. We'll let the heels turn out, doing the same thing into the pinky toes. And then some windshield wiper rolling from big toe back out to pinky toe. Both my feet feel a lot looser, and I'm not feeling that sensitivity where I was feeling the pain on the bottom of my right foot. That actually feels a lot better. I do feel more tightness and tension on my left foot, lateral arch of the foot, more so than the right. So again, the right foot is where I was feeling discomfort and pain. Left foot is still largely a little bit tighter. So next, going to lift the knees, dropping chest into our chest, getting deep as we comfortably can. Alternating gas pedal, reaching through the heel, one leg and then the other leg. At this point, I just want to see if there's some improvement in how that felt, either in the calf, back of the knee, or hamstring. So again, my right foot feels significantly better. My left leg, if anything, it almost feels tighter. I think it largely feels tighter because my right side feels so much looser. So there's a much bigger tension pattern on the left side than there is on the right side. So as I come up and talk about this, where I'm feeling the discomfort is on the right side. Where the problem is related to the left side. So if I focus all my attention on the right side, I'm going to get limited results. Probably the results I've gotten from what I've done on the right side are about as good as it's going to get unless I take my attention off that foot and start addressing other areas of the body, which is what we're going to get into next. So we're going to now come into our V position, actively reaching the knees down to the floor, actively pulling the tops of the feet back to the shins. Hands are coming down to the ground, grounding palms. Spiral those elbows out and away. Feel your shoulder blades pack down to the floor, getting as tall through your spine as possible. And we're going to work on rotation through the long bones of the legs, focusing on the kneecaps. We're going to exhale as we spiral the knees out and away as if you're trying to touch the floor to the outside of your legs. Inhale as you spiral back up, and then in, seeing if you can, how close can you come to touching the floor on the inside. And going back and forth. And as you're doing this, notice how far does the right kneecap travel compared to the left kneecap? How does this feel deep within the hips? Do you feel a difference on the left side compared to the right side? My right hip feels pretty good. Left hip, I feel impingement, not pain, but tightness as I internally rotate, and I feel stretch as I externally rotate. That is not on my left side. So again, discomfort on my right foot is more than likely related to immobility in my left hip down to my left foot. Now, coming back to feet straight up, continuing to actively reach the knees down towards the floor, pulling the tops of the feet back towards the shins. We're going to lift our hands, and we're going to get into some nice just folds. Nice inhale in through the mouth, in through the nose, fill up that belly. On the exhale, letting the hands slide forward. Inhale, bringing it all the way back up to tall. We're feeling into that back line of the legs. How does this feel through the right leg compared to the left leg? Do you feel it more in the hamstring, back of the knees, or more down into the calves? Or do you feel it up into your low back? I feel a little bit more tightness in this left hamstring, especially high, a little right above the knee. As we're getting into it, we can start to deviate a little bit side to side, although I want to keep shoulders and hands square. So as I reach to the side, I want to turn shoulders with, keep hands even, and then do the same thing to the other side. By reaching side to side, we're going to isolate a little bit more but each leg one at a time. Again, my right side, I feel pretty mobile. Left side feels tighter, more restricted. We can continue to reach closer, more towards the heels. Again, keeping the shoulders square. Ooh, one other thing I'm feeling. So I feel tightness through that back line of the hamstring on my left side. And it's more to that lateral outside of the leg. I'm also feeling more tightness on the right side low back. When I reach to the right, I have more mobility. When I reach to the left, I feel stiff and tight. So again, these are things that I'm relating to what I'm experiencing at the foot. The problem is not at my foot. It is elsewhere, things that are being pulled and preventing me from getting my normal function through that foot, which makes the foot hurt. And with what I'm feeling, there are more kind of massage using the foam roller, things that I will do on my own. I'm not going to include those in the class because it's just going to be too much and too long. Next, we're going to get into our shin box. So bringing knees up, making a nice box with our shins. Outside hand, palm is grounding to the floor, elbow fully extended. Spiral that elbow out so you feel that shoulder blade pack. Lift through the sternum, nice tall spine. We're going to focus on the back hip to start with. And again, I'm in assessment mode. I want to feel, how does this hip move? Where does it feel tight? Where are the patterns at? We're going to inhale. I'm reaching that hip like I'm trying to touch the floor. And then I'm lifting it up, reaching forward and lightly scooping into it. I want to feel, can I feel some stretch through the front of the hip? Can I feel that glute start to tighten and contract based on scooping that tailbone? Inhale, I'm reaching it back towards the floor. Exhale, lifting it up and scooping. I got lots of space between this back hip and the floor. I'm really trying to see how much range of motion will this hip travel. Does it touch the floor? How far off the floor can I get it? How far forward can I get it to scoop without getting a whole lot of extra movement in my shoulders? Kind of isolating that hip. After about 5 to 10 reps, we're going to very slowly windshield wiper across to the other side. And we're going to do the same thing. Palm grounded, spiraled elbow, tall spine. Inhale, feel, letting that back hip reach to the floor. Man, so this hip is tighter. Now, if you follow my classes pretty regularly, this is normal. The left hip is constantly more tight than my right one, especially through this medial aspect, hip flexor, anterior compartment of the hip. I don't quite get as much scoop going forward, and it's a little bit harder for me to get down to the floor. So I have less range of motion. And I would even say I got less range of motion than I normally do. I do these movements every day so that I can assess, so that I can see what is my normal function. My normal function is there's normally some imbalance between both sides. But more importantly, when it's even more exaggerated. Today, it's even tighter than normal, especially with that scoop. So again, this is the area that I need to focus on for my foot. My left hip, calf, arch of the foot, back line, more lateral, but also getting into the anterior hip as well. And part of doing these movements is we are working on those things now. This is a part of the correctives. We're going to windshield wiper back to the other side. Inhale, letting that back hip drop. Exhale, scoop, reaching forward. And now we're adding in a nice reach with rotation. I want to reach through this knee like I got a piece of bread, and I want to say, hey, would you like some bread? Sharing that bread. Inhale, I'm bringing it all the way back. Letting that hip drop. Exhale, lift and scoop. And share that bread. Now I want to feel that hip scoop and lock in so that as I add that rotation, we're bringing that original stretch through the front of the hip into our low back or obliques. You might feel this up into the abdominals. You might feel it into the low back. If you spread hands and extend elbows and spiral that palm up towards the ceiling at the same time, you might feel some of that tension stretch up into the shoulders as well. And again, I want to be nice and assessment focused, noticing where it feels tight, how easy does it move, so that when we go to the other side, we can compare, which we'll do now. Nice slow windshield wiper as we go back across, grounded palm, spiraled elbow, tall shoulder. Inhale into that back hip, exhale, scoop, and then adding in our bowl of soup. Oh, so real tight right here. So this feels a little more mobile just from the first time doing it, but as I scoop and I add this rotation, oh, I feel it tighter in the front of this left hip. I also feel it tighter on the right side low back. And it kind of almost wants to take my breath away. So again, this is a normal tight pattern for me, but I'd say it feels a little tighter than usual. Oh, and just doing a few reps, it's already opening up a little bit. It's already improving, starting to get a little bit further, less breath being taken out. I'm able to reach a little further, and I'm able to get a little bit deeper into that hip without it being painful or uncomfortable. We're going to slow windshield wiper back across to the other side. Doing the same thing with that back hip. Inhale, reaching to the floor. Exhale, scoop. But now we're going to bring that opposite hand off the floor, bringing it up over the top of the head. Forearm is flush with the ceiling. As we exhale and scoop, opposite hip is rooting down into the floor, and we're lifting up, trying to touch the ceiling with that elbow. Inhale, reach that back hip to the floor. Exhale, lift, scoop, feel that stretch on the front of the hip, and then opposite side, rooting down, lifting tall. I want to see if we can feel stretch through the front of this back hip, as well as length through our side body. Can you feel any interesting mobility stretch in that side body, low back, or up into the shoulder? And again, I want to have this as kind of nice comparison. We're assessing, so we'll see how it feels differently on the other side, which we'll go to now. Nice slow shin box to the other side. Hand comes up. Inhale, that back hip drops. Exhale, scoop as it reaches forward, and then rooting down and reaching up, trying to touch the ceiling with that elbow. This is definitely a little tighter than it was on the other side, but the tension pattern is not as significant as the rotation was. But it's still there. Still a little bit sticky in this low right side, low back, and a little sticky in this anterior hip. So this is a related pattern, but it's not the most pronounced pattern. We'll slow windshield wiper back to the other side. Now we're going to get into our folds. So with folds, I want to start out, I want to have shoulders square with the shin, hands are square with the shin. Nice inhale. On our exhale, we're letting those hands slide forward. I want to keep the spine tall. I don't want to drop head and chest towards the floor where we get this rounding upper back and neck. Spine is tall, sliding hands forward. keeping the hip reaching back towards the floor, almost like you're letting that tailbone slide back as your hands reach forward. Inhale brings us all the way back up. We'll do 5 of these. Again, nice assessment. How does this feel through that back of that hip? Where does it feel tight? How far are you able to go? Do you feel it more in the low back or do you feel it more in the hip? And then we'll switch and do the same thing to the other side. Get a nice square chest, shoulders to shin, hands are square to that shin. As I reach, man, so this is significantly tighter. It's tighter both in that left hip and it's also tighter in the glute of my right hip. So I have tension patterns in right side or inside of the left hip, outside of the right hip, greater than it is on the opposite side, which is a significant pattern in the hips, which will definitely relate to things going on down at the foot. Once we get good 5 reps on this side, now we're going to start to go back and forth. Nice slow windshield wiper into our fold. Inhale, back up to our windshield wiper. Into our fold on the opposite side. By going back and forth, we get a much better sense of comparison. How do both sides feel the same? How do they feel different? And as we're going back and forth, can you get them to feel more similar than dissimilar? Can you play with it a little bit to where you find the movement groove that feels somewhat even or closer to even? And just by doing a few reps, my right side folds are getting a little bit more mobile. Once we've done a few 3 to 5 reps, we're going to start to open up that shin box, letting that back knee slide open a little bit. I'm now no longer worried about staying square to my shin. I'm just getting nice and exploratory. I want to feel nice and long, non-painful. I want to make sure I have good inhale and good exhale of breath. If you find that you're getting into a position where you're holding breath, then back off a little bit. Make sure that you can get a good smooth inhale and exhale. And if it's tight and restricted, then kind of play with the juicy nature of that tension. Don't force it. Don't try to push through it. Again, with each one, we're slowly opening that back leg a little bit more. We're kind of moving towards what we would consider a yoga class pigeon pose, although I'm not overly concerned with achieving the pose, especially if it's tight and restricted or painful. If you can get into that pose comfortably, non-forcefully, then great. Again, this right side is starting to open up a little bit more. And if anything, as I get that right leg back, I'm feeling a little bit more tension pattern to the outside of my left hip. More in that glute medius, glute minimus area. So part of what we're doing is getting a good map of those tension patterns. So I had some right side glute tension, but as I get into that more glute min, glute med region on the right side, it's actually more mobile on the right side and tighter and stiffer on the left. Which tells me that most of the issues on that right side are related to how much tension is in that left side. All right, we're now going to get onto our back. Arms are going to come straight out to the side with the palms up. This is where I like to imagine we're laying in a bed of sand and we're making a nice imprint of the sand with our upper back, and I don't want to smear that imprint. I want it to be a perfect capture of my upper back. We're going to bring knees, feet off the floor. I want hips to be a little bit less than 90 degrees. So they're going to be tucked in a little bit so that we feel the low back flat to the floor. Knees are around 90 degrees. As we have those arms out, palms up, we're just going to slowly let our hips, one hip is lifting up towards the ceiling as our hips rotate towards the floor, but I'm only going as far as I can maintain a perfect imprint in the sand. Inhale comes back to center. Exhale goes to the other side. Again, perfect imprint. Start small. By starting small, you will notice if there's a difference in the ease of this rotation. As I rotate towards the left, it's a little bit more challenging. It's not overly hard, it's not major, but I feel it's not as smooth, it's not as easy. And as I get that hip elevated, I feel more tightness and tension on the right side low back. As I do it to the left side, it's easier, not as tense, and I'm able to go further. So this is looking at lumbar rotation, and I have limits in my lumbar rotation to the left compared to the right. And that's going to be a significant pattern related to the discomfort that I have going on in my foot. As long as you're able to maintain a perfect imprint in the sand, start to see if you can go a little bit further with each one without going into pain or discomfort. Definitely feel right side low back on this more so than left side low back. And that's going to be connected to that outside of the left hip, or really everything going on in that left hip down to the left foot. We'll bring feet back down to the floor. Legs are going to go flat, and we're going to bring one foot up, bend one knee, bring one foot flat to the floor, and we're going to move that foot out to about 45 degrees from the body. I want that foot to be nice and flat, and that knee is right over the heel. So if I change my orientation, foot goes flat, and we're moving it out 45 degrees, knee over the heel. From here, we're going to do some very light glute activation. I want to scoop that tailbone on that, or scoop the pelvis on one side as we press down into that foot, scooping up to the ceiling, seeing if you can feel that stretch on the top of the hip at the very top. Can you feel some tightness and contraction in the glute? Inhale, we're letting it soften back down to the floor. Exhale, we're scooping up towards the ceiling. I want to make sure there's only tension in one side of the body. Opposite leg, that leg should not be pushing down. That hip should not be lifting up. It should have zero contraction energy in it. It should be completely relaxed. Only one leg is driving down and is engaged. And if you're having trouble with that, then that's going to be that's something that we want to work on. That's something we want to look at. Probably worth scheduling a consultation so that we can go over it. And I want to do a good 10 reps, especially if I'm able to feel that contraction in the glute. I'm scooping up. I want to start to maximize that. So if I feel that contraction, I want to press down through that nice tripod foot. Foot is flat, even. I don't want that foot to roll in or roll out. I want to feel even pressure, ball of the big toe all the way to the ball of the pinky toe and heel, even. And if you're able to get that scooping up, feel that tension tightening in the glute. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Bring that foot flat, moving it out to 45 degrees from the midline of the body. Nice inhale, exhale, we're scooping that tailbone up to the ceiling. Oh, and this leg is really not liking that. It's not painful, but it does not want to scoop or get fully extended. So I'm going a little bit slower because I don't want to force scooping into it. I can definitely feel stretch. I just don't have as much mobility. I can feel a little bit of glute contraction, but because I can't get fully into it, I'm limited on how much glute I can get. Although as I'm doing a few reps, it's starting to let me in a little bit more. So again, going slow, nice full inhale, slow exhale, flat tripod foot, knee stays over the heel. It's not turning in, it's not rolling out. I want to feel as much of that stretch through the front of the hip, start to feel more of that glute contraction. I'm now starting to get into that next layer of the glute. I'm able to get a little bit more scoop, starting to get about even, a little bit more even. Definitely tighter on this side. So I have a little bit more work I can do on this left hip. Where they're going to bring it back across into that same on the right side again. So foot goes flat, out to 45 degrees. We're going to do the same thing, but we're going to add to it. Opposite arm is going to come overhead, relax soft on the floor. As we exhale and scoop, driving down through that foot, finding that stretch, maximum contraction. We're going to take this same side hand and we're reaching across the body through the chest. Flip to the other side. So as I scoop, I'm pressing that tailbone up to the ceiling, and then I want to make sure I am reaching straight through the chest. I don't want to reach above the chest. I don't want to reach below. Straight through. Now, as I reach, I don't want to lose connection through my foot. I want to be pressing down into the floor actively as I'm reaching away. If I maintain that pressure down as I reach, it's kind of like we're wringing out the spine. Nice exhale as we reach. Inhale, we're bringing it all the way back to the floor, including the hip. Exhale, scoop, lock that hip in first, then continue to exhale and reach. On the last one that we do, as you reach, I want to kind of reach and hold, and we're going to take some breaths from this space. I want to maintain as much of that hip engagement, glute engagement in the floor as possible, but we'll be a little softer with the upper body. So I'm reaching, and as I inhale, I can let those hands slide back a little bit, and then exhale, reach into it. And we can do that for 5 breaths. And what I'm really kind of working here is, can I get a little bit more downward pressure through the foot and reach through the hands? Can I get a little bit of more of this kind of nice, juicy stretch from hip through that low into upper back? And then we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. Foot 45 degrees, tripod foot, opposite arm overhead. Nice inhale, exhale, drive through that foot, scooping the pelvis, and then continuing to exhale as we reach. Oh, and that side, again, this is the tighter rope movement for me. Scooping that hip and then reaching and rotating. A lot tighter on this side. And again, this is the opposite side from where I have discomfort in the foot. But it's starting to open up. It's feeling a lot looser. I'm able to get into it more. On the next one, as we reach, we can reach and kind of hold that reach and add 5 breaths. Inhale, let the hands soften back. Exhale, reaching into it. Inhale, soften. Exhale, keep that foot downwardly pressed. Re-engage as you reach fingers away. Good. All right. So we're now going to slowly come up to a standing position. This class is going a little long. This last position we're working on, I'm not going to get quite as much into it as I was hoping to. We're going to get into a wide stance. Feet are facing forward. I want to really focus on having a good tripod nature of our foot. So that means pressure through the outside ball, the pinky toe, pressure through the big toe, pressure through the heel on both feet. We're going to just start with simple side to side. I'm just letting my hip sink back to the heels, keeping this leg actively straight and active pressure through the outside of that foot, bringing it up and doing the same thing to the other side. Can I maintain that pressure to the outside of the foot? Again, left hip much tighter through this hip. A lot easier getting into moving to the left hip than it is to move to the right hip. So this is where more than likely instability on my right side knee turns into instability in the hip. I don't have as much ability to support with my right glute, which is why my left hip is tighter. It's trying to prevent me from going into an angle that I don't have good neurological support. And that's pulling my hips into one direction, and that changes the way I move through my right foot. So problem is probably instability in my right knee. That's ultimately probably the deepest root of why my foot hurts. But I can't change that. I'm missing a ligament in my knee. It's going to be unstable. So the secondary aspect of this is, how does my left hip overcompensate for my right? That's what's causing the pain in my foot. So the more I can work on building stability in this right hip to support my knee and taking away this compensation pattern, or at least giving it some other strategies so it doesn't have to be so tight all the time, helps to take that, to get relief at the level of the foot. With each one, we're trying to get a little deeper into it, and especially just sinking into the hips, into the heels. I want to feel that sit, even pressure through the foot, going side to side. And then the last bit we'll do, there's a lot more we can do from this position, but I want to shorten it up to get through the class. We're going to find the level that we can get to on both hips, and we're going to work glide. So as I get into this right hip, active left foot, instead of coming up, I'm going to stay at that level, and I want to find that extended knee, active foot. Good pressure all the way out to the pinky toe as I move side to side. I can really feel that moving into that left hip. But as I do so, I can also feel it opening up, and I can feel some stability building up in that right hip as it figures out how to support the movement. Whew. All right. If you have any questions, if you found that helpful, highly recommend scheduling a consultation. Be happy to talk about what the next steps of things that you can work on in order to get some relief.